Today we're counting down the top 25 best single-player games you can play right now on the Nintendo Switch 2. Whether you just picked up the console or you're looking for your next adventure, this list covers all the bases: big RPGs, shooters, action games, and hidden gems. Let's get into it. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on Switch 2 is honestly kind of insane that it exists at all. This is a massive open-world RPG. We're talking 80 to 100 hours of content that Square Enix somehow squeezed onto Nintendo's handheld. The game picks up right where Remake left off, with Cloud and the gang leaving Midgar and heading into the wider world. You're traveling across huge regions, doing everything from climbing mountains to playing minigames with chocobo farms and card games. The combat is the same real-time action RPG system from before, but expanded. You swap between party members mid-fight, build up ATB gauges to unleash abilities and spells, and pull off synergy attacks with teammates. Performance-wise, the game is capped at 30 frames per second on Switch 2, and there are noticeable drops in large open areas, dipping as low as 19 frames per second in some dense outdoor sections. Resolution uses DLSS, scaling from 540p up to 1080p when docked, and around 380p to 756p handheld. Mina the Hollower is a top-down action-adventure that draws heavy inspiration from classic Zelda games like Link to the Past and Link's Awakening, mixed with a Castlevania Gothic atmosphere. You play as Mina, a mouse inventor who's been called to Tenebrous Isle to reactivate her spark generators, which are causing chaos across the island. The gameplay has you whipping enemies, burrowing underground to dodge hazards and traps, and using a variety of sidearms and trinkets you collect along the way. Exploration is non-linear. Bosses are tough but fair, and the 8-bit pixel art, styled after the Game Boy Color era, looks incredible in motion. The soundtrack by Jake Kaufman and legendary composer Yuzo Koshiro is absolutely phenomenal. On Switch 2, this thing runs at a rock-solid 120 frames per second in both handheld and docked modes, with HDR support that makes the colors pop in a way the original Switch never could. Dragon Quest VII is one of those games that always had a great story, buried under some really slow pacing and old-school design choices. The reimagined version on Switch 2 fixes a lot of that. The setup is still the same. You're a young fisherman's son on a small island who discovers that entire kingdoms have been sealed away by an evil force, and you travel through time to restore them. But the experience has been streamlined. The story is now told in a more focused, vignette-by-vignette structure. The visuals got a gorgeous diorama-style upgrade, and the combat has been seriously modernized. Turn-based battles now have new vocation perks, a moonlighting system that lets you level up 2 jobs at once, and an auto-battle feature to speed through weaker enemies. On Switch 2, it runs at a smooth, stable 60 frames per second, which makes the whole experience feel noticeably snappier in menus, battles, and transitions. Sektori. Made by a solo developer, Kimmo Lahtinen, who spent 13 years at Housemarque, making games like Resogun. This is a twin-stick arcade shooter that feels like what Geometry Wars would look like if it was made in 2026. You pilot a small triangular ship in a top-down arena, shooting waves of colorful enemies, while the playfield itself constantly shifts. Walls drop in and out, sections split apart, the whole environment is in flux. On top of that, there's a deep card-based upgrade system, where before each run, you build a deck of 8 card sets. When you grab rare pickups mid-game, you choose upgrades that can completely transform your build, adding defensive drones, backwards-firing weapons, or wild synergy combos. The game has multiple modes, online leaderboards, and over 100 medals to chase. It runs at a rock-solid 60 frames per second in both handheld and docked modes on Switch 2, feels incredibly responsive, and has HD Rumble 2 support that genuinely enhances the experience. Blueprints is one of the most unique puzzle experiences to hit Switch 2. You're trying to reach the mysterious Room 46 inside a sprawling mansion that rearranges itself every single day. Each run starts fresh at the entrance. You have a limited number of steps before exhaustion forces you to reset, and every movement counts. The mansion layout is procedurally generated. You draw from a hand of room cards and choose which ones to place as you explore, building the path forward yourself. Some rooms unlock persistent triggers that carry over across runs, slowly layering in a sense of progression. The mystery is genuinely deep. Finding room 46 is just the beginning, and the game rewards careful observation, note-taking, and piecing together clues hidden throughout the manor. It's the kind of game that will randomly pop into your head at 2 a.m., and you'll think, wait, I figured something out. Mio, Memories in Orbit is a French-developed Metroidvania that immediately grabs you with its visual style. The environments are hand-painted with a watercolor aesthetic, and the camera dynamically weaves through foreground and background as you move. It's genuinely beautiful to look at. You play as Mio, a nimble robot exploring the Vessel, a massive AI-controlled spaceship that's falling apart. The Pearls, the AI caretakers, have stopped functioning, and Mio needs to dive into the ship's depths to restore its lost memories and prevent a complete shutdown. Gameplay is built around fluid movement, tight platforming, and an expanding toolkit of abilities you unlock as you explore. Combat is functional. You start with a 3-hit combo and finish with a 3-hit combo, so don't expect huge depth there. But the bosses are excellent, the world design is inventive, and the soundtrack is probably the best you'll hear in a Metroidvania in years. Slow piano during exploration that explodes into something almost cinematic during boss fights. East 10, Proud Nordics. The story follows the red-haired adventurer Adol Kristin and a fierce pirate warrior named Karja Balta, who become mystically linked through a power called mana. They get pulled into a conflict between the seafaring Normans and a race of seemingly immortal monsters called the Griegers. Combat is fast, fully real-time, and built around the dual character system. You can switch between Adol and Karja on the fly, and their linked connection lets you pull off devastating combo attacks together. The traversal is also a lot of fun, including a tethered swing mechanic and a surfboard for faster ocean travel. Proud Nordics adds new content, improved QOL mechanics, and expanded story content around a character named Canute and his sister Astrid. On Switch, 2 targeting 120 frames per second, running at 60 frames per second base, with a performance mode that pushes toward 120. It doesn't always hold steady at 120, but it feels incredibly smooth and is a showcase of what the hardware can do. Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn Edition. The story follows Alfin, a man with no memories and no ability to feel pain, and Shion, a woman whose touch causes agony to anyone who gets close. What starts as a rebellion story evolves into something much bigger and more emotionally complex. Combat is real-time and flashy. You control one character while your party fights automatically, using combo strings, dodge mechanics, and big, flashy mystic arts to deal damage. The art style is stunning, heavily inspired by anime, with UFO table quality cutscenes throughout. Beyond the Dawn then continues the story after the main game's ending, with a new chapter that focuses on a young girl named Nazamil. On Switch 2, the game runs at 30 frames per second locked during gameplay, with cutscenes running at 60 frames per second. The 1080p resolution holds in both handheld and docked modes. Mouse. P.I. for Hire. It's a first-person boomer shooter set in a 1930s noir world populated entirely by animated cartoon animals. Think Mickey Mouse's aesthetic crossed with a classic detective thriller and classic Doom-style gunplay. You play as Jack Pepper, a mouse private investigator voiced by Troy Baker, who gets pulled into a web of corruption and conspiracies. The rubber hose animation is completely hand-drawn, frame by frame, and the black and white aesthetic with flashes of color is genuinely jaw-dropping in motion. Gameplay is fast, twitchy, and satisfying. You're moving constantly, using a full arsenal of weapons and picking up clues between firefights. The big band jazz soundtrack by Patrick Selena ties everything together. Performance on Switch 2 is decent, but not perfect. Performance mode runs at 1080p/60 FPS docked and 900p/60 FPS handheld, while quality mode targets lower FPS in exchange for sharper resolution. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is a proper indie game, and I mean that in the best possible way. It's 1937, and you're playing as Indiana Jones in a globe-trotting adventure that bridges the gap between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. You're chasing a mystery connected to a set of ancient sites aligned around the world, known as the Great Circle. Gameplay is first-person and built around the same pillars as the films: stealth, exploration, puzzle-solving in ancient tombs, and satisfying melee combat with the whip. Troy Baker absolutely nails the voice acting, and the John Williams score plays throughout. The level design is open but structured. You explore dense environments, find hidden paths, and uncover secrets, the way a real indie adventure would play out. On Switch 2, the game runs at a stable 30 frames per second in both handheld and docked modes, locked intentionally by Machine Games to preserve visual quality. Docked resolution is 1080p, handheld is 720p, both using DLSS.
To face off against dangerous foes and explore a world full of daring escapes and unforgettable encounters.
Watch out!
Octopath Traveler 0. You create a custom character whose hometown of Wishvale gets burned to the ground, launching you on a journey of restoration. The game has over 30 recruitable party members, and you can bring up to 8 into your party at once. The classic break and boost battle system from the series returns. Exploit enemy weaknesses to knock them down, then unleash a big boost-powered attack. There's also a new town builder mechanic, where you rebuild Wishvale by placing and customizing homes and buildings, which feeds into the ongoing narrative. It's a game you can spend dozens of hours with just building and discovering new interactions. On Switch 2, it runs at a locked 60 frames per second at 1080p in both handheld and docked modes. A genuinely impressive achievement, given how technically demanding the HD2D engine is with its shadow and lighting work.
Be strong. My turn. Attack.
Let's end this.
This is our chance.
Vampire Crawlers is a first-person blobber, meaning you move tile by tile through dungeons where combat plays out through a card-based combo system. You play cards in ascending mana order, and each card you play multiplies the effect of the next one. Use wilds to extend the chain and the damage just keeps snowballing, 10, 20, 30 hits deep. Each run you choose a character, pick a dungeon from the world map, and try to clear it while unlocking new abilities and building more powerful decks over time. The progression is deep, the runs are short and snappy, and the one more run pull is absolutely relentless. Yoko Shimomura, best known for composing Kingdom Hearts, contributed to the soundtrack, which gives the game a weight it really doesn't need but absolutely earns. The Switch 2 native version also has better performance than the Switch 1 version in busy mid-game sequences. At only $10, this is one of the best value games on the platform. Final Fantasy Tactics is back as the Ivalice Chronicles, a full, enhanced edition of the 1997 tactical RPG classic. The story follows Ramza Bulv, a young noble whose true role in a pivotal war has been buried from history, and his complicated relationship with his childhood friend, Delita. It's a dark, political story about class, betrayal, and honor, far more mature than most games of its era. Gameplay is turn-based tactical combat on grid-based maps. You move characters around battlefield stages, like city streets, forest clearings, and castle halls, targeting enemies based on terrain, height, and unit positioning. Job classes are deep and customizable, and the interplay between different builds is endlessly strategic. This new version adds full voice acting, a revamped UI, autosave, new difficulty modes, and quality of life improvements that make it far more approachable for newcomers.
The next move is key.
Trails in the Sky, First Chapter. The story follows Estelle Bright and her adopted brother Joshua as they train to become Bracers, a guild of peacekeepers who protect people across the Liberal Kingdom. It starts off feeling like a lighthearted adventure, but gradually builds into something far more emotionally complex. The combat has been revamped, with partial action elements inspired by the newer games in the Trails series, mixing turn-based strategy with more active positioning and field mechanics. Character writing is where this series has always shined. Everyone in this world has a personality, relationships evolve naturally, and even random NPCs have their own ongoing stories across your playthrough. On Switch 2, after an initial patch that resolved launch performance issues, the game offers two modes, 1080p/60 FPS, performance mode, and 4K/30 FPS quality mode when docked. Handheld runs at 60 FPS in performance mode with solid stability. Planet of Lana II is a stunning, side-scrolling cinematic puzzle platformer and a significant leap forward from the original. The hand-painted world looks like something out of a watercolor storybook, and the game has no spoken dialogue at all. Story is told entirely through visuals, animations, and an alien language. The story picks up with Lana and her small companion Mui on their home planet, where new technology is spreading fast and creating friction between different tribes. As the situation escalates, they're pulled into a journey that takes them across frozen peaks, deep oceans, and long-forgotten ruins. Gameplay has been expanded. Lana now has new movement abilities, like wall jumps and run slides. Mui's AI companion behavior is more precise and interactive, and there are physics-based puzzles involving new creatures and hybrid robots you can control. The sequel is roughly twice the length of the first game. Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D Remake takes the very first two games in one of gaming's most beloved RPG series and rebuilds them with the same stunning Octopath-style HD 2D visual engine. Dragon Quest I is the classic solo adventure. You play as the legendary hero, a descendant of the great warrior Erdrick, tasked with rescuing a princess and defeating the Dragon Lord. It's short, focused, and now filled with new cutscenes and story moments. Dragon Quest II then expands things significantly. You're playing with a party of 3 and exploring a much bigger world. Both games have been given new content, updated scripts, and quality of life improvements. On Switch, too, you get 2 graphics modes, a 30 frames per second quality mode with sharper visuals, or a 60 frames per second performance mode with softer resolution. Performance is stable in both, with quick load times and responsive menus. Dynasty Warriors Origins is a full reset for a series that really needed one. This isn't your standard mow down 1,000 identical soldiers grind. Origins has a proper story, strong characters, and combat that actually demands your attention. You play as Ziluan, a wandering warrior with amnesia who gets swept up in the conflicts of ancient China's Three Kingdoms era. As you fight, memories of who he really is begin to surface. There are 3 branching story paths with multiple endings, giving the game real replayability at around 25 to 30 hours per run. Combat keeps the Musou core big battlefields with hundreds of soldiers, but adds genuinely engaging one-on-one duels against officers, a momentum-based stagger system, and a wider moveset that rewards learning. A dedicated performance mode hovering closer to 60 frames per second is available in some settings. One of the best console launches on Switch too.
You countered their attacks with great skill. Defense is the key when outnumbered.
Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. The story reimagines the events of the original Final Fantasy VII, but focuses entirely on Midgar, a cyberpunk city controlled by the Shinra Corporation, which is draining the planet of its life energy. Cloud Strife is a former soldier turned mercenary who joins the eco-terrorist group Avalanche, and what unfolds is a deeply emotional, visually spectacular adventure that expands the original story in meaningful ways. Combat is a hybrid of real-time and tactical. You attack in real time to build ATB, then pause to execute abilities, magic, and items. The Intergrade version also includes the Yuffie DLC chapter, a separate story following the ninja Yuffie on a mission in Midgar. On Switch, too, it runs at a stable 30 frames per second in both handheld and docked modes, with visuals comparable to the PS5 version. DLSS upscaling brings it to near PS5 fidelity, comfortably beating the PS4 version. Loading times are significantly faster than PS4. Monster Hunter Stories 3: Twisted Reflection. The story this time is set around 2 warring kingdoms and ancient prophecies. It's a bigger, more cinematic narrative than either of the previous entries, fully voiced and told with anime-inspired cutscenes that look incredible. You play as a rider, someone who bonds with monsters called monsties by finding their eggs and hatching them, and take those companions into turn-based battles. Combat works on a rock, paper, scissors elemental system, and once you figure out the patterns, it becomes deeply satisfying. The bond attacks you can pull off with your Monstie are genuinely spectacular. The open world is full of things to do: monster dens, side stories, crafting, and post-game content that extends well past the 40-hour main story. On Switch, too, performance is uncapped, and typically floats between 30 and 40 frames per second during open-world exploration, with combat feeling more stable. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. This is the one that started it all for countless Yakuza fans, and now it's on Switch 2 with a new coat of paint. Yakuza 0 is a prequel set in the glitzy, neon-soaked Japan of the 1980s, telling the story of a young Kazuma Kiryu and the legendary Goro Majima before either of them became who they're known as in the rest of the series. Kiryu gets framed for a murder and has to fight his way through the Yakuza underworld to clear his name. Majima, working as a respectable club manager, is pulled back into a violent world he tried to leave behind. Both stories are told in parallel, and the writing is flat-out exceptional, funny, heartbreaking, and full of incredible side characters. Combat has 3 switchable fighting styles per character, each with massive upgrade trees, and the brawling is some of the most satisfying in any action game. The director's cut adds 26 minutes of new cutscenes and deeper character moments. Night City has come to Switch 2, and it's a lot better than you'd expect. Cyberpunk 2077 in its Ultimate Edition includes the full base game plus the Phantom Liberty Spy Thriller expansion, a package that easily represents 80 to 100 hours of content. You play as V, a mercenary trying to make a name in a hyper-corporatized future megalopolis, who ends up sharing headspace with a legend. The open world is one of the most densely detailed ever created, with hundreds of quests, side jobs, gigs, and characters that feel genuinely alive. The RPG systems are deep. You customize your playstyle through cyberware body enhancements, ranging from enhanced eyesight to electric punches and superpowered legs. On Switch 2, the game offers quality mode at 30 frames per second and performance mode targeting 40 frames per second, both at 1080p when docked using DLSS. Handheld, performance mode targets 40 frames per second at 720p. Frame drops happen occasionally in busy open-world moments and during some Phantom Liberty sections. Resident Evil 9 is here, and it's back in Raccoon City. Resident Evil Requiem is the 9th mainline entry in the series, and it brings 2 protagonists, Leon S. Kennedy and a new character named Grace, into a ruined, abandoned version of Raccoon City to uncover a terrifying new threat. Everything that makes RE great is here: tense survival horror, tight inventory management, puzzle solving, and some of the most unnerving enemy encounters in the series. Capcom built it on RE Engine, and the result is absolutely stunning. The decayed city feels genuinely oppressive. On Switch 2, Capcom delivered an outstanding port. In handheld mode, the game runs at a mostly consistent 60 frames per second, at what appears to be 1080p, genuinely impressive for this caliber of game. Docked mode targets 60 frames per second, with some dips into the 40s and 50s in larger outdoor areas, and in the absolute worst case, can hit 30. DLSS handles upscaling from an internal 540p to around 1080p. Pragmata is a sci-fi action game set on the moon, where you play as Hugh, an interplanetary handyman investigating why a space station has gone dark. He encounters Diana, a childlike android who has the ability to hack into the station's systems, and the two work together to fight their way back to Earth. The relationship between Hugh and Diana is the beating heart of the game. It's warm, funny, and genuinely moving. Combat is where Pragmata gets bold. You're playing a third-person shooter, but when you aim at an enemy robot, Diana starts hacking it simultaneously. The more you keep your reticle on target, the more vulnerable the enemy becomes. This creates a layered, timing-based combat loop unlike anything else out there. Boss fights are spectacular, enemy variety is strong, and the 15-hour runtime feels tightly paced. On Switch 2, the game targets 60 frames per second, but doesn't always hold it. Docked performance frequently dips into the 30s and 40s, and there's no frames per second cap option. Pokémon Pokopia. It's a life simulation sandbox RPG developed with Omega Force, the Dragon Quest Builders team, and it's something genuinely new. You play as Ditto, shapeshifted into the form of your missing trainer, who wakes up in a post-apocalyptic Kanto region. All humans are gone, the world is a wasteland, and it's your job to rebuild. The game's loop is all about collecting resources, crafting furniture, terraforming land, constructing homes, and creating environments that attract Pokémon back to the world. As Pokémon return, they teach Ditto their moves, Bulbasaur's leafage to grow crops, Squirtle's water gun to irrigate fields, which you can then use to reshape the environment further. There are 6 territories to explore across Kanto, each with its own mystery to unravel. The story is surprisingly affecting. It investigates what happened to the humans through environmental storytelling that only the player picks up on. It's cozy, clever, and enormous in scope. Donkey Kong Bananza is a 3D platformer from the Super Mario Odyssey team, and it is absolutely phenomenal. The story kicks off when DK is mining for bananas at Ingot Isle, and an evil corporation steals them all, shunting the island underground. DK teams up with a girl named Pauline and travels through layered underground biomes to recover his bananas and get back to the surface. The central mechanic is total environmental destruction. Every surface in the game, rock, dirt, ice, salt, wood, has its own material properties, and DK can punch, rip, and tear through all of it. It's not just spectacle, the destruction is a puzzle tool. Freezing a piece of ice enemy and throwing it onto lava to create a path. Dumping salt-rich sand on a corrosive parasite to neutralize it. The terrain itself is your weapon and your solution. The game was actually impossible to build on original Switch. The development team confirmed it literally could not run the amount of physics objects required. "25 incredible single-player games on Nintendo Switch 2. Whether you're grinding JRPGs, blasting through action games, or just vibing with something cozy, there's genuinely something for everyone here. Drop a comment letting me know which one you're picking up first, and if this helped you, a like goes a long way. See you in the next one.